Hey, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I would like to give you guys a run through of the new DxO ViewPoint 5, which was launched earlier this week. I've been fortunate enough to be playing around with it a little bit before that, as well as this week. And I have to admit, initially and in the past, ViewPoint itself for me was one of those bit of a mystery program, in the sense of I wasn't always that impressed by it. But with the most recent version, the more I play around with it, the more powerful I realize it is, and the more useful it is. Now, the best way I can explain it is that obviously within ViewPoint you have the ability to do things like perspective correction, volume deformation, etc. on a global level, so in the whole image, to the whole image. Now with ViewPoint 5, what they've done is they basically reimagined the reshape tool, and it's now called Reshape Fusion, and this allows you to to apply these adjustments locally within the image. So volume deformation, so making things a bit like bigger or smaller, to scale things also locally, bigger, smaller, rotate them, move them, and also do perspective correction locally, so only to parts of the image and not to the whole image. So yeah, it's quite a lot to to take in. Let's jump into the edit. I'll show you guys, yeah, more or less give you a quick run through of all the things that are new, and then yeah, you can decide for yourself if this is something that you want to check out. So here we are in PhotoLab 8. I have a ViewPoint 5 installed, and this gives you the extra functionality to use within PhotoLab, as ViewPoint integrates seamlessly with it. Now, just quickly before I start, so the reason I'm doing this within PhotoLab is because ideally that's how you would use ViewPoint. It's works the best, or it's the most well, or smoothestly, is that even a word? Come on. And it's the best integrated with PhotoLab. It also allows you to apply these effects more in a more non-destructive way. ViewPoint can also be used as a plugin for Lightroom and Photoshop, as well as other programs. And if there's a bit of time towards the end, I'll demonstrate that as well. But I'm going to use it within PhotoLab because that's how it ideally is designed to use, and that's how I use it. Okay, so I've got a selection of images open here. Get cracking to demonstrate or to show you guys most of the new effects. So let me just close that down. We've got more real estate. So let's start. We're going to work left to right. So I've got this image of the swimmer underwater here. I'll double click on that and go into the customizer. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to interrupt myself again quickly. I forgot to say. So all I'm going to do here is basically just demonstrate ViewPoint's new features. All the color edits and stuff have been done to the images or have not been done. That's not the focus of this. So it's just going to be the ViewPoint 5 adjustments. I'm not going to do any sort of other editing to the image. Okay, with that said, so with DxO's editing options down the right, on the right hand side, and moving from top to bottom, I'm going to go over to the fourth little tab here, which is geometry. I'm going to select that, and then all the way on the bottom here, you'll see there's the new Reshape Fusion. And I'm going to activate that. Nothing is going to happen. You have to click on this little tool, well, next to the word tool, there's this little icon, square with sort of a dot on each edge. So you click on that, and then you see you have a grid overlay on the image, and you also have new tool selection on the bottom left here. Now, if we quickly do a run through of that. So currently I've selected here is the free transform option, and within that you have the move tool, you have the rotate tool, and you have the scale tool, and you have the new sticky borders checkbox, which is when you do these adjustments. I can maybe show you quickly. So if you do drag an image away from, let me quickly do that. Undo that. So when you make adjustments, the image sometimes comes away from the edge of the frame, and if you enable sticky borders, it just pulls it back, so it actually just sticks the image to the edge of the frame, which is quite a useful feature. And you don't have to crop them off, or crop parts of the image off at a later stage. It obviously works within limits, so just do that, quickly reimagine that 100%. And then moving on from free transform, you also have perspective. Now you have horizon leveling, you have the force parallel, and you have the 8 points force parallel and horizontal. And you also have the sticky border option, as well as propagation. Now the propagation slider, which is also new, if we can, well, I'll demonstrate this a bit later actually. So this just allows the effect to be applied outward from its localized point. And then lastly, on the right you have volume deformation. Yeah, and this you can apply horizontally and vertically, or just diagonally. So in a diagonal line, again with sticky borders and propagation. So moving swiftly along, you can also adjust the grid density. So if you have a look on the grid density here on the image, you can also adjust the grid density to restrict the effect within a smaller area. And you can also select the points that you want to affect like that, and then you can just move those points around like you want. And then, like I mentioned with propagation, you can see that you can propagate it out, so then more areas around that central point of adjustment gets affected. Now with this particular image, we are not going to do that because of the, let's just reset it rather, it's going to be a bit easier. There we go. So with this image, the reason I chose it was because of the wide angle lens that was used. And you can see with the swimmer's hands, when they get to the edge of the frame, it looks like this, like that, the hand starts to look, or yeah, aspects of things in the frame, in this case a hand, starts to look abnormally big, so it gets deformed, volume deformation, hence volume deformation. Now that's what I want to demonstrate with this image. So let's jump into it. So we've been through the tools. Now I'm going to start all the way on the right hand side here with volume deformation. I'm also going to increase the density of the grid to the fourth option, I think. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and the reason for that is we have the tiles within the swimming pool here, and there's obviously straight lines and horizontal lines. Now if I just adjust a small area, those lines are going to get skewed. So in this case, I want to select, go outside the image, the frame, and select the points all the way along from top to bottom up to about there. And then I'm going to slide the horizontal slider to the right, and that's you'll see what that does to the hand. So that just compresses the hand, the left hand of the swimmer, to look a bit more normal in size, not so elongated. Vertically, I think it's fine. Can also maybe compress that vertically a tad. Yeah, it's not doing too much there. Just like that. And then if you have a look on the left hand side here, you can see the image has been pulled away from the frame there. Now if we click on sticky borders, it's just going to pull it back. So yeah, useful feature. And then propagation wise, I'm going to slide that to the right, and you'll see that the swimmer's head start to be pulled towards the hand. The further I slide it, the further the effect is applied to the right. So propagating out, in other words. Yeah, and that is pretty much that. So let's close that out. I'm going to quickly zoom into 100%, press tab to enlarge the image, and then under compare, I'm going to select corrections without geometry, because this is geometric adjustments. And then when I click on compare, I have the shortcut D also. So that was before, that was after, before, after, and that looks a bit more natural. So yeah, very useful. I can just maybe mention, I don't think I just mentioned this at the start of the video. So for me, ViewPoint is a little bit like, almost like Photoshop's warp, free transform warp tool. So this saves you a round trip to Photoshop. You can do it all within PhotoLab itself. And yeah, so it's quite useful in that sense. Okay, so that was that. This was the volume deformation adjustment. Then moving along to this interior image. Double click. Okay. So you can see at the moment there's been no geometric adjustments or perspective correction adjustments applied. It's just the default color adjustments that PhotoLab applies to any image. Okay, so in this case, what I like to do, even though we have the reshape fusion option that is new within ViewPoint 5, I'm going to apply the perspective correction. It's automatically applied. You can also apply it manually, but you can see over here these lines are a little bit slightly overcorrected. Now I just want to decrease that intensity, and I can press G to activate the grid here. So you can see there those lines are a little bit overcorrected, so I just want to take the intensity down, down a little bit. So, and then I can deactivate the grid. Now what has happened here is this ceiling feature. Well, what do we have here? A kitchen island with a ceiling island, ceiling feature. The edge here, the top edge is quite close to the frame. And if we zoom out a little bit, where's the crop tool? And then if we activate reshape fusion, and now we can see there the part of the image that's outside the frame. It automatically crops when you do perspective correction. It automatically crops the image to, you know, so all the black areas are cropped off. Useful feature with the new version of ViewPoint is we can go to free transform. I'm going to increase the density of the grid to about there. Now, because this is an architectural image, you have to be careful of the lines. So if what instinctively what you would want to do is almost increase the density of the grid to there, then just select the ceiling feature there and then drag it down, which would work. So you get that back into the image, and you see the top part that gets pulled away from the edge of the frame. You can just enable sticky borders and we'll pull it back. But regardless of that, what happens now, the lines here are getting skewed. Now we can propagate that out, but which fixes that mostly, but it's still slightly curved. Now, if we have a quick look at it before after, see, that's not bad. However, let's quickly enable that again. We'll reset that. Another way to do it would be to use a slightly less dense grid and then select, like I did with the previous image. My propagation is still enabled there, so just like that. So select the whole top part of the image, like that, and then we can drag that down together so those straight lines are staying straight. It's getting a little bit compressed, but that's not the end of the world for now. So just do about there. And then if we want, it's cropped out, but we can also just, the sticky borders pulls that edge a little bit again. So just to there. And before we would have had to open this image up in Photoshop, free transform, blah, blah, blah. Now we can do it within PhotoLab. And we're going to close that out. So if we go down the history here. So originally, when I did my perspective correction, what did I do there? Why is it not? There we go. Sorry. So that was with the original perspective correction. You can see how close the this edge of this feature is to the top of the frame, which is not the end of the world, but it's a little bit. If you're getting technical about architectural or interior photography, that's not ideal. And then once we applied the reshape fusion, you can see it's just far enough into the frame, and all the lines at the top here are straight. So yeah, quite a useful feature or adjustment to be able to make. So that was that one. Then going away to this again, architectural image back in the day, make that 100%. And again, I am in the free geometry section here in PhotoLab. Now, if we enable the grid, you can see the vertical lines here are not that far off straight, but we can enable perspective correction. It's going to auto correct slightly over. So I'm just going to pull back the intensity to get them to where more or less where they're all nice and straight. Now mostly this image is actually fine. The only thing that has happened here is because of the perspective correction, you can see that the horizon is slightly skewed. Now if we want to correct that like we would traditionally within something like Lightroom or with Darktable or PhotoLab, you would have to rotate the image globally, which would again make these lines here too upright or overly corrected. Now if we go disable the grid, go to reshape fusion. So we've done our perspective correction to the point where we're happy with the vertical lines. Now the horizon is a little bit skewed. Now within reshape fusion we can actually go to perspective correction and to horizon, and again importantly grid density is fairly important. Now I think more or less there it's going to be good. It's also good to play around with this, and then we can do local horizon leveling. So we're going to put that out to there, and we're going to click apply, and you can see it's just done that horizon correction, just in that little area there. So I'm going to apply that, close that out. Now we have the best of both worlds. We have perspective correction to where we want it, and we have the level horizon. So let's just have a quick look. That was before, if you have a look on the horizon here, and that was after. So not a big change, but if you're using this in terms of print or advertising, etc., you want it, or portfolio wise, you want it to be correct. So that was before, after. And if we have a look, that was where we started, that was where we had the perspective correction, and just the last little bit of horizon leveling. So not a big change, but in terms of overall image impact and yeah, I mean, I think a level horizon is quite an important thing most of the time, especially when it's an ocean like this. So yeah, that was another little useful feature from the new ViewPoint 5, that local horizon leveling. Okay, moving on to this image. Now, I quickly got to remind myself what I did here. Okay, so let's zoom out ever so slightly. Again, I'm going to do perspective correction. That's going to auto correct. So let's click on that. And again, if we enable the grid, you can see on the left here and on the right, it's and in the middle here actually. The middle is not too bad. Center of the image, slightly too strong or too upright. Now I'm just going to take that back to about 75-ish, to where it looks good, sort of in the center part here. And I'm going to disable the grid. Now what has happened is this looks more natural. However, this vertical line right on the left hand side here of this building, and this the line here of the top of part of this building is almost, for me, or to the eye, looks a little bit decoupled from this bottom line next to the garage entrance here. That line looks like it's leaning over ever so slightly more. So with Reshape Fusion, which is new in DxO ViewPoint 5, if we enable that, again, we're going to go to perspective. So we have free transform, perspective, and volume deformation. Under perspective, we're going to do vertical lines. And importantly, with this, it's important to realize. Nice terminology, Cornelius. It's important to realize that the length of the line has an impact on the adjustment. So if you draw a short line like that, it will just impact the area around this line. Whereas the longer you draw it, you can the bigger impact it will have on more aspects of the image. This is not like the traditional perspective correction where you can adjust a line like this, but it has those dotted lines that carries on to show you where the perspective correction is going to be applied throughout the image. Here it's very much local. So in this case, I just want to do it to this top part of the building and to that part there. So hopefully this works out. Let's see. Like it should. And when I click apply, there we go. It's a little bit strong actually. So let's reset that quickly. So I'm just going to draw that again. Yeah, so again, because I didn't increase the density of the grid again. So I want to affect a more local area, which means, at least in my understanding, what I've been playing around with this is that the more dense the grid, the more it's going to restrict the adjustment to that area. Whereas if you have a less dense grid, you'll see also line-wise it has less points within the image to manipulate. So let's make the grid a bit more dense. I'll draw the lines again. See if I can get that done a little bit better. Like that. And we click apply. Not bad. Okay. And we can propagate it out ever so slightly. Okay, so let's close that out. And you can go before, after, before, after. Now again, with architectural imagery, it's important to be aware of these vertical lines. You can see there's a slight deformation there. Now if we go back to Reshape Fusion, again, it's important to realize here you can't change the density of the grid. But what you can do is go back to the free transform part. And I know I've been selecting, you can select points like that. Oh no, it's just going to reset the whole thing. Close it out quickly. No, okay, there we go. So, but what you can do as well is you can actually manipulate individual points, which I didn't realize until quite a bit later. So you can go here and just straighten that out. So it's very localized warp tool. So it's like magic. And then also we have the last little bit of this image here. We have a little bit of just the edge of the tap and some of the foliage plants. Easier word, sticking into the frame there. Now we can crop it off, or you can also just manipulate these individual points like that, like that, and then we can close it out. So there we go. So we went from, let me just quickly, what I'm going to do, that, without geometry. So we went from there to there. And how we did that is by initial perspective correction, decrease the intensity to there, and then with Reshape Fusion, the local perspective correction on these individual parts of the buildings here on the left and right. Then we ended up with a little skew line here. Then we used the free transform tool to locally straighten that line and then get rid of the plant and the edge of the tap there. Yeah, perfect. So very useful. I mean, like I mentioned, I was very much a little bit skeptical of this tool. I still learn, but yeah, let me rephrase that. I was originally very skeptical of this tool, but it's become more and more powerful the more I get to know it and play around with it. So try that out and see if that could be useful for you. And then the second last image is this one, which is quite a difficult one because of the way how tightly the image is framed, as well as the skewness of the vertical lines. So ideally, we want to correct for the building and have as much of the top of this plant sculpture within the frame. Okay, so just trying to remind myself here. So let's try normal perspective correction. Okay, so that's quite strong. We enable the grid quickly. Just going to back that off ever so slightly. No, let's leave that like that. It's not too bad. It's a tad strong maybe, so we're just going to do it to about 90. Then enable reshape fusion like that. Now we get a bit of a more fuller view of the image. So fortunately here, most of this top part of the sculpture is in blue sky, so it's going to make the adjustment a little bit easier. So let's just decide on the density of the grid here. So I'm going to go, I'm going to go about there, yeah. So okay, so we want to get as much of this back into the frame. So let's see how we're going to do that. So I'm going to do that with selecting all the points around like that, and then basically dragging them down, but also being careful, and if you do that, everything's going to be skewed. So you want to keep the line straight as you drag that down. Now, as I drag this down, it's obviously starting to affect adjacent parts of this sculpture. So now I've got most of it back into frame. Now we can also just click out and then reselect the uppermost points so as to get them back into frame, just like that. So just like that. So now I've got that back in frame, and then again click off and then select. No, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just select this top part. I'm not sure if I'm going to get everything in here. Should we go for it? Let's just see how extreme we can get. I think I might actually just do a quick global shift again. So it takes a little bit of a trial and error. There we go. Okay, and then lastly, I might just do individual point adjustments just to get the top part of this flower back in. Sculpture flower. I'm not going to worry about sticky borders because most of it's cropped out in any case. So let's just close that out. So there we go. Quite extreme perspective correction. And on top of that, with reshape fusion, we managed to get the top part of the sculpture back into frame. So that's that's just the normal perspective correction. And then that is with reshape fusion. So as you can see, I mean, if you saw the image before and now with adjustments, you can see obviously some changes naturally, but if you were viewing this image for the first time, you wouldn't know that that's been adjusted like that. And again, like I mentioned, so this saves me a round trip to Photoshop. It saves me a lot of extra editing, exporting files, having other versions of the file, and it's all within PhotoLab. So very useful. Okay, so last image, as we are moving into the 30-minute mark again. Okay, so this is an interesting one. Here we don't obviously need any perspective correction. We do need horizon leveling a little bit. Oh, there we go. There we go. So horizon leveling. Take that up there. Take that there. Just a tad. Click apply. Okay. There we go. Now, I'm gonna indicate with the mouse here quickly. So we have the moon, top of the frame here, top left. You have this woman jumping off the pier, her friend wading in the water, and we have the pier that's from the bottom of the frame here leading us into the frame. So this it's like a curved line. So you start sort of bottom middle here. The pier leads your eye into the frame, starts to curve down to the left as she jumps off, and then we have the moon and then out of frame. Now, yeah, I mean, it's not as the image is. It's actually quite. It's good. That is how I have it currently. But let's say you want to make some transformation adjustments to it locally, and before you would have to head into Photoshop or your pixel-based editor like Pixelmator Pro or Affinity Photo, etc. Now within PhotoLab, we can do it all within PhotoLab. Excuse the repetition. So looking at this image, what I want to do is enlarge this part here. So this central part here. So her, the moon, and this part of the pier. And then what I would like to do is actually rotate this part of the pier more around to the left here so that it forms more of a curve into the frame. So let's see if we can do that. So I'm going to enable reshape fusion, density of the grid, I'm going to keep just in the second one to more or less there, keeping in mind we also want to do rotating more locally here. Okay, so I'm going to stay within the scale or free transform workspace, tab, module, however you want to frame it. I'm going to select these points through the whole horizontal part of the frame to about, yeah, I think there should be fine. And I'm going to go to scale, and I'm going to bottom right here, so that's going to scale it around like that and like that. Don't worry about how things are looking. So now she and the moon and everything else there is bigger. Then I'm going to go back to the move tool, and then I'm going to collectively drag this just back up because it's pushed down a little bit, which I'm didn't want. So just like that. I'm going to click out. I'm just going to select the top part of the image here quickly and drag that out, just because I don't want those pixels to get too compressed up there. Okay, so that's looking pretty good there. And lastly, what I want to do is click off those points, go to rotate, and then select the bottom part of the image essentially. So I think probably most of it, more or less to there. And then rotate that around. So currently you can see on the left hand side there, it's getting pulled away from the edge of the frame. To see what sticky borders does. Great job, so it just pulls it back. And now I just want to go down back a little bit lower still and rotate that a little bit more. Just about there. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's close that out and let's have a look at what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that, and without geometry. So that's where we started, and that's where we ended up. Pretty decent. She's bigger within the frame, moon is slightly bigger, and that the pier is more of a curved line, leads the eye through the frame better. It's not Lightroom, don't press G. I have to press tab and then back to the library. Okay, right. Well, I hope that was informative, useful, made you think a bit about maybe trying out ViewPoint 5. Like I mentioned, for me personally, it was always one of those dark horse aspects of PhotoLab, never really sure what it brought to the program, but since I've been playing around with it a bit, I really think it adds a lot. Whether you should buy it or upgrade, it's up to you and your specific needs or your specific use case. If you want to stick around quickly, I'm going to show you just what the plugin looks like from Lightroom, and then we'll finish off. Cool. Okay, so let's just quickly switch out to Lightroom. So here I have the same images open. So let's do volume deformation, and we'll see if we can do one other one quickly. So we right click on an image and say edit in ViewPoint 5. And then it's going to ask you how you want to export the image. So this is the difference. So here it creates a copy. You can create just a copy or with Lightroom adjustments. Obviously we want a TIFF file, Pro Photo RGB, 16 bits, 300 dpi. You can say edit. It's going to create a copy, and it should open the plugin version of ViewPoint 5. So now here, while it's loading, now here you have a copy of the file. So more hard drive space, and you're also working with a plugin which is destructive. You can't readjust those aspects. You have to completely re-edit the image. Okay, I see it has used the full screen, so I'm going to drag that back into our screen real estate here. So the plugin is essentially it is the same naturally, but it looks slightly different. So here the image has been opened up. You have the before after things at the top left here, and then you have the plugin adjustments on the right hand side here. Now here we have things that traditionally always came with ViewPoint, like volume deformation, etc., which are global adjustments. And with the new, here we have in the middle reshape fusion. So basically doing the same like I did in PhotoLab, I'm going to enable that. Then with grid density is on the right hand side here now. I'm going to go to about there. I want to use volume deformation, and I'm going to zoom out tad, so I can select all those points like I did before. And then I'm going to do horizontal volume deformation. Now, one thing about the plugin is it's a little bit more, it takes a split second more to react than when you do it within PhotoLab. Just something to be aware of. Sticky borders, there we go. And propagation. So I have to drag the slider and let go, then it has the effect. There we go. And if we go to, oh, actually, sorry, let's click apply. And if we go to before, after, before, after. And then we can click on save. And we are back in Lightroom. Quickly, just look at the full version. Before, after, before, after. Okay, and then let's just do one more image. Which one are we going to do? Which is the most interesting? So if you remember with this one, we had the perspective correction, which was too strong. And then this top part was too close or just sticking out of frame, which we could correct. This one was the local horizon leveling. This one was local perspective correction. And this one was that extreme crop because of the extreme perspective correction, which we managed to get back into frame, top part of the sculpture. So let's do this last one quickly. So right click, edit in DxO ViewPoint 5, 300 dpi, and it will open. Let's reset the program. There we go. So like I mentioned, so grid density, reshape fusion, grid density, to more or less there. That's a bit too extreme. Let's keep it about there. We want to free transform, scale, then select these points here, and then we're going to scale that, and go back to move, drag that up to about there, and then because we've selected just up to here, it's compressing the pixels along this line a little bit. So I'm just going to click off that, then select this top part, and then drag that up a tad just to get rid of the pixel compression there. Because it's a uniform, or mostly uniform color range, it can create a band. And then we want to rotate the bottom part of the pier. So let's click off that. We're going to go to rotate. I'm going to select that there, and then rotate that ever so slightly, and then I'm going to come down right to the bottom, and then rotate the last part there, and then we're going to do sticky borders. There we go, and we're going to click apply. So we went from there to there. I see it has not done that sticky border there. Wonder why. Anyway, just crop that off. There we go. So before, after, before, after, and all without needing to go into a program like Photoshop. So there we have it. DxO ViewPoint 5. Take it as you will. Yeah, hope you enjoyed that. Hope it was useful. Yeah, I will probably. I will enjoy using it within my workflow. I don't know how often, but it's definitely useful. It's very powerful, and it saves a lot of time without tripping to other programs. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Love to hear them, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Ciao for now.